The wind scar was not a path, it looked like one only from a distance. From above, the desert floor appeared unbroken, flat, pale, textured only by scattered stones and low scrub. But closer to the ground, a narrow line cut through the surface, lighter in colour, smoother in texture, a place where the wind had stripped sand away layer by layer, exposing firmer substrate beneath. The Jackal found it first. It approached from downwind, head low, tail relaxed but alert. Its movement was unhurried but deliberate, angled slightly so scent carried cleanly across its muzzle. The scar held information clearly. Tracks lasted longer here. Smell lingered where it would normally vanish within minutes. The Jackal stepped onto the wind scar and paused. The ground felt different. Not solid, just less yielding. The sand compressed instead of flowing. Each paw left a shallow impression that did not immediately collapse. That mattered. The Jackal followed the line. It moved along the scar in a loose trot, scanning ahead and to the sides, ears rotating constantly. Small animals favoured these exposed strips. Insects crossed them. Rodents darted between scrub, using them as quick routes through deeper sand. The scar was efficient. Efficiency attracted attention. The Karakal observed from higher ground. It had climbed a low rise of packed sand and stone before sunrise, positioning itself where the wind scar intersected a shallow basin. From here, movement along the scar stood out clearly against the surrounding terrain. The Karakal did not follow. It waited. Its body lay low against the slope, legs folded beneath it, tail curled loosely along its side. The wind passed over its fur without lifting scent toward the scar. This was intentional. The Karakal hunted by surprise, not pursuit. The Jackal entered the basin. It slowed, sensing change. The scar widened slightly here, the sand more disturbed, the surface uneven. The Jackal's gait shifted, steps shorter now, weight kept centered. It sniffed once, twice. Another scent layered faintly beneath its own. Karakal. Old, but not too old. The Jackal hesitated. It did not retreat. Instead, it angled its body slightly off the scar, ready to break away if needed. Its ears flattened briefly, then rose again. The Jackal was cautious, but not submissive. The wind scar betrayed both of them. The Karakal rose smoothly and began to move, not toward the Jackal, but parallel to the scar, staying just above it on firmer ground. It used the slope to mask its outline, its paws placing weight carefully to avoid dislodging loose sand. The Jackal noticed the movement too late. It turned sharply, muscles tensing, ready to bolt. The Karakal accelerated. The distance closed rapidly, but the ground intervened. The Jackal ran directly along the scar, trusting the firmer surface. The Karakal cut across it, attempting to intercept. As it descended onto the scar, the sand beneath its paws behaved differently than expected. It did not hold. The exposed layer collapsed under sudden force. Sand slid sideways, then down, flowing rather than compressing. The Karakal's stride broke mid-step. It recovered instantly, but the delay was enough. The Jackal gained ground. The chase continued for several seconds, both animals running hard now, sand spraying behind them. The wind scar that had guided movement moments before now destabilized it. Tracks overlapped, edges crumbled, the line lost definition. The Karakal abandoned the chase abruptly. It skidded to a stop, claws digging into deeper sand beyond the scar. Its breathing was fast but controlled. It stood still, watching the Jackal retreat until distance made pursuit pointless. The Jackal did not look back. It veered away from the scar and disappeared into scrub, choosing deeper sand despite the cost. Survival favoured distance over efficiency now. The wind moved again. Fine sand drifted back into the scar, softening its edges, erasing clarity. What had been a reliable line minutes earlier was already changing. The Karakal remained where it was for a long moment. It did not react with frustration. It adjusted. The scar had offered opportunity, but only briefly. It was not stable ground. It never had been. It only borrowed firmness from absence of sand, not from structure. The Karakal turned away and climbed back to higher ground, choosing routes shaped by stone rather than wind. Below, the scar faded. The Jackal would remember it differently, as a shortcut that worked once, as a place where footing was good, until it wasn't. In the desert, lines left by wind did not belong to anyone. They existed only until pressure tested them, and when the sand would not hold, both hunter and scavenger learned the same lesson, at different speeds. The wind scar did not disappear overnight. By dawn, its edges had softened, but the line remained visible, lighter than the surrounding sand, smoother where grains had been stripped away, uneven where the collapse had begun the day before. It no longer promised reliability, but it still offered contrast. Both animals noticed. The Jackal reached the scar first again, arriving from the same downwind direction. Its pace was slower this time, its head carried lower, nose closer to the ground. The Jackal no longer trusted the scar blindly. It sampled scent more often, stopping where it had run without pause before. The ground still held better than the surrounding sand. That mattered. The Jackal followed the scar only in short segments now, leaving it to circle through scrub or deeper sand before rejoining farther along. This broke its own pattern deliberately. Predictability attracted attention. The Karakal watched from farther away than before. It chose higher ground again, but not the same rise. Yesterday's position had been exposed by movement. Today, it selected a rocky outcrop where sand thinned naturally and footing remained honest. From here, the scar was visible, but not central. The Karakal was no longer waiting for the Jackal. It was waiting for the ground. Wind had shifted during the night. The scar now ran at a slightly different angle relative to the slope. In places, sand had drifted back unevenly, forming thin crusts that concealed deeper looseness beneath. This was worse than obvious instability. Mid-morning, a second Jackal entered the area. Smaller, younger. It approached the scar directly, running along it with confidence born of ignorance. Its paws struck the firmer surface rhythmically, throwing up little sand. It paused once, sniffed, then continued. The first Jackal watched from cover. It did not join. The Karakal shifted its weight slightly, following the younger Jackal's movement with its eyes. This was a better target, less cautious, less experienced, but the ground had not changed its nature. The Karakal moved parallel again, keeping elevation, pacing the Jackal's progress rather than committing. The younger Jackal veered suddenly off the scar to chase a rodent that broke cover too close to the line. The chase lasted only seconds. The rodent vanished into scrub. The Jackal skidded to a stop where the scar widened. The sand collapsed under its rear paws. Not dramatically, but enough to force a correction. The Jackal recovered quickly and continued on, shaken but intact. The first Jackal retreated farther from the scar, its lesson reinforced. The Karakal did not attack. It was learning too. The scar was not a corridor. It was a trap that worked unpredictably and favoured no one consistently. Speed here was borrowed, not owned. By afternoon, heat loosened the surface further. The exposed layer dried, lost cohesion, and behaved more like surrounding sand with each hour. The advantage narrowed. The Jackals adapted first. They used the scar only to cross deeper sand quickly, never staying on it long. They entered and exited at shallow angles, reducing reliance on any single stretch. They avoided the basin where collapse had been worst. The Karakal adjusted differently. It stopped tracking along the scar entirely. Instead, it began to use the scar as a signal rather than a route. Where it crossed open sand, it indicated animal movement. Where it broke abruptly, it marked hesitation. Where scent layered thickly, it suggested repeated use and carelessness. Late in the day, the Karakal attempted one controlled approach. Not a chase, an intercept. It moved downslope slowly, choosing stone patches and compacted ground until it reached the scar at a narrow point where wind had cut down to firmer substrate. It tested once, lightly. The sand held, briefly. The Karakal crossed and climbed immediately, never accelerating, never committing weight fully. It reached cover without incident. That was enough. The scar could be crossed, not used. As evening approached, wind returned, stronger this time. It carried sand back into the scar, filling low spots, blurring edges. By nightfall, the line was less distinct than it had been in days. The jackals passed nearby without using it. The Karakal watched without interest. What had briefly shaped movement now dissolved back into the desert's general uncertainty. The lesson was not dramatic. No injury, no dominance asserted. Just the quiet understanding that some advantages were temporary and some surfaces punished urgency more than caution. The wind scar would appear again somewhere else. Both predators would find it, and both would test it once before deciding whether the sand would hold. The first permanent line did not announce itself with noise. It announced itself with consistency. The Karakal noticed it at dawn from higher ground where the desert unfolded in layers rather than detail. Something below cut across the sand at a shallow angle. Not pale like the wind scar, not soft-edged, but darker, compressed, and stubbornly unchanged after a night of shifting wind. A vehicle track. The jackals found it later, moving along the basin's edge where the wind scar had once been most reliable. Their behaviour changed immediately. They slowed, sniffed, circled. The scent here was heavy, layered, and foreign. Oil, dust, heat, rubber. It did not disperse like animal presence. It clung. The ground felt wrong. Where the wind scar borrowed firmness briefly, this line imposed it. The sand was crushed flat, compacted into a surface that resisted collapse. Each paw print remained sharply defined. Too defined. The first jackal crossed quickly, ears angled back, tail low. It did not follow the track. It cut across it and left immediately, choosing deeper sand despite the effort. The younger jackal lingered longer. It stepped along the track for several body lengths, testing the surface. The firmness was intoxicating, speed without slide, effort without sink. But the smell overwhelmed everything else. Information blurred into noise. The jackal abandoned the track abruptly and shook its head, irritated. Above them, the Karakal did not move. It watched the line instead of the animals. The vehicle track intersected the old wind scar near the basin. Where they crossed, the scar lost all meaning. The sand had been pressed so deeply that the wind's work was irrelevant. The surface here would not shift late. It would not shift at all. That was dangerous. Permanent lines changed behaviour faster than predators ever could. Over the next 2 days, more tracks appeared. Not many. Enough. One ran parallel to the basin. Another cut toward the rocky rise the Karakal favoured. None were straight for long. They bent around obstacles, followed contours, returned repeatedly to the same routes. The desert began to remember them. The jackals adapted first. They used the tracks at night, briefly, darting across firm ground to save energy, then abandoning it again. They never ran along them for long. Exposure was too high. Sound carried farther on compacted sand. Shadows behaved differently. The Karakal avoided them entirely, not out of fear, but distrust. The ground here did not respond honestly. Pressure did not translate into feedback. The surface held until it did not, and when it failed suddenly at the edges where compacted sand met loose dune. The Karakal tested one track once. It placed a single paw on the compressed surface, applied minimal weight, then withdrew. The sensation was wrong. Too stable, too predictable. That meant human return. Where humans returned, structure followed. The wind scar faded completely now, not because of wind, but because it no longer mattered. Movement was being shaped by something stronger than erosion, repetition. Late one afternoon, the Karakal observed a new sound. Not a vehicle this time. Metal against metal. Brief, sharp, followed by voices, distant but clear. Humans had stopped near the track intersection, their presence lingering longer than before. The jackals retreated immediately, disappearing into scrub and uneven sand without hesitation. The Karakal stayed. It remained motionless on high ground, watching until the sound ceased and the humans left. But the ground below had changed again. Fresh compression layered over old. The line darkened slightly. That night, nothing crossed the basin. Not jackal, not rodent. The prey had adjusted already. By the third day, the desert's movement patterns were no longer shaped by wind or hunger alone. They bent subtly around the new lines, avoiding intersections, favouring broken ground that humans avoided. The Karakal's territory fractured, not reduced, redirected. It shifted its hunting routes farther into rocky zones where vehicles could not pass easily. Hunting became harder, slower, more vertical. Success depended more on patience than speed. The jackals split their range. One favoured the edges of human presence, scavenging cautiously, learning schedules. The other stayed farther out, relying on traditional routes, thinner prey, and silence. The wind continued to move sand, but its lines no longer mattered where heavier pressure existed. From above, the desert still looked open. From the ground, it was becoming segmented by scars that did not fade and paths that did not forgive mistakes. The Karakal lay on stone and watched the tracks cool under moonlight. They would still be there in the morning, the wind scar would not. And in that difference lay the future of movement, for everything that lived low to the sand.